ancient world is full of strange things that simply just don't make sense at all in our modern world, and a lot of these strange things appear in the form of laws. That is why we are back today with a part 3 of the top 10 ancient laws that make no sense. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have no beard. Peter the Great was the Tsar of Russia, and during his time in this position it is said that he really admired some of the cultures of Western Europe. Because of this admiration, he introduced a lot of Western styles of dress to his court, Western art, Western architecture. You get it, the whole shebang. On one of his visits to the West, it is said that Peter realized that there weren't many beards in the West. They weren't really as popular, and he didn't see as many people sporting them. This of course was quite the contrast to what he was used to. I mean, at the time in Russia, it is said that beards were quite popular in all types of people, and it is said that this was because at the time a beard was seen as bringing a man closer to God, so of course people wanted to sport them. Peter saw this difference and decided it was time to put an end to free beards. What I mean is that he introduced a beard tax that pretty effectively made having a beard illegal for most people. Those who could afford this tax were given tokens that showed they were allowed to keep the beards, and those who had a beard without a token would be held down and had their beard shaved in public, which just might be one of the weirdest things I've ever said. In our number 9 spot today we have pies. Okay, so apparently there's a rumor that England once banned the eating of mince pies, and while it's not the full truth, that did actually kind of happen. So basically, eating mince pie has been illegal in England only at one point in time. The reason behind this is because at this time everything Christmas related was being banned because Christmas Day fell on a day of fasting. During this time, Oliver Cromwell had come to power after the execution of King Charles I, and his government was trying to at least downplay, if not ban, everything to do with Christmas, and this included eating mince pies. So during all of this, it wasn't completely illegal to eat a mince pie, but it definitely wasn't promoted. The closest they came to outlawing mince pies would have been in 1656, but thanks to the restoring of Charles II to the throne, mince pies are now free to be eaten wherever one should choose. Now I want a pie. In our number 8 spot today we have no football. Football, or soccer if you're Canadian like me, is truly an ancient game, but despite the fact that people have been playing it for centuries and centuries, it has had a bit of a rocky history and has actually been banned on several occasions in England, as well as in Scotland and France. It is said that the first official ban of the sport was in 1314 when King Edward III decided to ban it within the London city walls because he had received complaints from merchants that the sport was causing disturbances in their business. Other monarchs would also go on to ban the sport, mostly on the grounds that it interfered with archery practice. In 1424, the sport was banned by King James I in Scotland, and the punishment was a fine of 4 pence. All in all, it's safe to say that football has had a bumpy ride to get to be the beloved sport that it is today. In our number 7 spot today we have sloth. This is a law that was seen and followed by the Inca. It is well known that the Incas had quite a wonderful and advanced civilization, and that is certainly no easy feat, especially for the time period. This is exactly why, while this rule might be a little extreme in our modern times, it definitely makes more sense for the time period and where it comes from. This rule was about laziness and how it was really looked down upon. Lazy people would deprive the Sapa Inca of their work, and the punishment for this was hefty. Laziness was punishable by death. So don't eat that extra bag of chips on the couch. In our number 6 spot today we have no insults. Okay, so this is a law that comes from the time of Vikings, and it of course has to do with insults. I mean, they definitely took them quite seriously. So basically, if you hurled insults at someone, they were entitled to compensation, and they could summon everyone else who's on the road to be the witness. If you spoke bad of someone during the Viking Age, even if the person wasn't there, it could ruin their reputation, and because of that, you need to pay them for the possible damages. It doesn't even matter if the insult was true, either. Your reputation was how you gained employment, met friends. It was a really important thing that was not to be messed with. Also, if you insulted one man, you insulted his entire family as well, so that's like 20 people right there, one insult. There were some words, however, where a man would be allowed to kill you if you said them about him, so maybe choose carefully and think before you speak, if you're still a Viking. In our number 5 spot today we have the Holmgang. This is another Viking Age law that has to do with single combat. Basically these fights called Holmgang were the easiest way to ascend the social ladder and get rich. So basically if someone didn't show up for their fight, the other guys got to call him the worst of the worst insults 3 times over, because I mean, we know how terrible and detrimental that would be. But if they both show up, the match is on. If you weren't capable of fighting, you could have someone else fight on your behalf, like it's Game of Thrones and it's a trial by combat. I'm looking at you, the Mountain. The duel didn't necessarily have to end in death, although it could and usually did, but drawing blood was enough. Someone just had to surrender, but then who knows what people would say about you after. In our number 4 spot today we have Sandcastles. This is a law that is said to have existed in the city of Eraclea, Italy. Basically the law states that the building of sandcastles is illegal. Honestly, I didn't know that sandcastles were a government concern, but here we are. It is said that the rationale behind this law is that banning sandcastles helps keep the public decorum or the public decency. To me it just seems like they made a law for the sake of making laws, but I'm just wondering what the punishment for it would have been. In our number 3 spot today we have no sway. The Theodosian Code is one that was written in 438 AD, and one of these rules was a strict no solicitation policy. What I mean by that is that it forced all Christian churches to submit to the Catholic Church, and if they refused to submit, the penalty would be being considered a heretic. If someone tried to convert someone away from Catholicism, well, real trouble would ensue. It's kind of ironic when you really think about it, but this law suggested that anyone who tried to sway someone away from the Catholic Church would receive a penalty of death. Honestly, I'm starting to wonder if you could do anything in ancient history that didn't end up with a death sentence. Don't get me started on sandcastles. In our number 2 spot today we have the Veil. So this law is one that comes from the Asura Code, which is a compilation of Assyrian laws that were written about 1075 BC. This law was in reference to women and how a woman that was considered honorable should cover their faces in public with a veil. This meant that women who weren't considered honorable definitely were not allowed to wear veils, because how else could you tell the difference? You would think that they would focus on anything else, but apparently this was a very serious crime. If a woman who wasn't supposed to wear a veil was found wearing one, she would receive a swift and harsh punishment that would see her having her clothing removed, receiving 50 lashes, and then she would see herself condemned to death. Yeah. It was a little overdramatic. In our number 1 spot today we have no dying allowed. This is a law that seems to me like it might have been kind of hard to enforce, but that didn't stop people from trying. There apparently has been several places that made dying illegal throughout the centuries. It is said that the earliest known case of this law was seen on the Greek island of Delos in the 5th century BC. The island was considered to be a holy place by the ancient Greeks. This meant that the entire island needed to be purified in order to make it a proper place to worship the gods. In the 6th century BC, all the bodies and graves that were in sight of the main temple on the island were dug up and removed. That's how seriously they took it. To further this, the Delphic oracle decreed that all bodies must go and that the act of death was illegal on the island, as was giving birth. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Now I want a pie. Jen, let's get pies. The penalty would be being considered heretical. I don't know, a heretic.